الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to our weekly webinar. And for those who've been attending previously, we've been looking at a whole series of different types of arguments that can be used against atheists to demonstrate the existence of God. And in this previous sessions, we were focusing on the teleological argument, also coming in various different names, known as the fine-tuning argument or the argument from design, sometimes, especially amongst Christians, known as the argument from purpose. And the basic composition of the argument, or the main argument, if you look at the structure of the argument, is as follows. The first proposition is that the universe we see and live in is masterfully made and consummate. The signs of care and providence therein are apparent. The second proposition, this consummate mastery suggests that there is a wise, omniscient doer who created it in this manner. And then the conclusion is that Allah is the wise, omniscient creator who created the universe. Now, we looked at some of the issues previously. Now, today's going to be very quickly focusing on some of the proofs that have been presented for the different propositions. Obviously, the first proposition is crucial. And then briefly, we can touch upon the second proposition, which leads us to our conclusion. So again, when it comes, this is a very detailed topic and it can take literally hours discussing, and it can become quite complex as well. So I will purposefully try and avoid some of the complexity that is involved with this particular topic, but hopefully much of it will be apparent. If we look at the proposition again, the first proposition, the universe is masterfully and consummately made. So when a person thinks about the phenomenon of the mastery that exists in this universe, looks at its wonderful manifestations and imagery, they would see that this argument can be found clearly evident across so many different spheres that we live in. The whole entire universe, with all of its beauty and grandeur, all of it demonstrates the mastery of the universe. And therefore, there is so much abundance of evidence for this that we would have to be completely blind to not realize what we see in front of us, because it is quite obvious for people to see the immense precision, the fine-tuning and beauty within a universe. And that's why I think we touched upon this previously, that when it came to traditional Muslim scholars, they wrote in detail about this particular point. For example, one of the writings, Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, in his Shifa al-Alil, and also Miftah Dar al-Sa'ada, discusses this in a lot more detail. Also, Imam Ghazali in his Al-Hikmah fi Makhluqat Allah also discusses this in far more detail. And now, obviously, the advantage is with the advancement of scientific knowledge, we're able to even understand with far greater understanding the sophistication and the precision in the creation of the universe. And so that will further help us in our understanding. One of the first concepts that we can look at when it comes to demonstrating this first premise or proposition is the fine-tuning of the universe. And this is a scientific concept that can be used to understand the detailed construct of the universe, right? What's known as the fine-tuning of the universe. And the main argument here is that when the universe is thought about and contemplated, we can see that there are these extremely finely tuned laws and constants that are in place for life to exist on the universe. And these laws are so finely balanced that the existence of the entire universe rests upon this, and that if there was any imbalance in terms of the fine-tuning of these laws or these constants, then it would lead to the ultimate destruction of the universe, and there would be no life on in the universe. So a lot of scholars have given various different ways to try and understand this phenomenon. One of it is the one I've presented in front of you by Professor Stephen Meyer, who is the founder and director of the Discovery Institute. And he gives us this particular example that imagine that you are an explorer, that you have just stumbled into a control room of the whole universe. And there you see this elaborate universe creating machine with rows and rows of dials, each with many possible settings. And as you investigate, you learn that each dial represents some particular parameter that has to be calibrated with a precise value in order to create a universe in which life can exist. One dial represents the possible settings for the strong nuclear force. So that's just one thing, the strong nuclear force. Then you have one for the gravitational constant, one for what's known as Planck's constant, one for the ratio of neutron mass to the proton mass, one for the strength of the magnetic attraction, and so on. All of these different dials are related to just one of these different areas. Now, as you examine the dials, you find that you could easily have been tuned to a different setting. And moreover, you determine by careful calculation that if any of these dial settings were slightly differed, altered, life would not exist. Yet for some reason, each dial is set just at the exact value necessary to keep the universe running. What would you infer about the origins of this finely tuned, finely tuned dial setting? Hopefully, the logical conclusion would be that there is something or someone that has collaborated or calibrated these dials so that these constants could gain and retain the values that are distinct to them and necessary for the existence of life on the universe, right? So that is just a quick way of trying to understand the complexity and the precision by which we have the universe. And now, of course, we can go into each one in more detail. So let's just look at, for example, gravity, right? Because when we ponder on the Earth's gravitational pull, it controls over us, and how it pulls us back down to itself, we feel that there is this mighty force from which there is no escape. However, when compared to other natural forces, it appears to be very weak. In fact, it is 10 to the power of 36 times weaker than the strong nuclear force, right? So now to understand how exceedingly narrow this life-permitting range, you have to imagine that you have a fine-tuning machine, right? And then if you divided the degrees of the dial 10 to the power of 60, I'm not going to even try and go through all of the figures, right? 10 to the power of 60 probabilities, you are required to get the tuning right for this particular pile of probabilities. That's why Martin Rees, who's the famous British physicist, he clarifies that had gravity been slightly stronger than it is, the stars would have burned out and their energy would be rapidly depleted, causing their ultimate death. So that's just one aspect. The precision when it comes to gravity and the fine tuning is something which is so, the numbers are so unlikely for it to be just happen by chance. Likewise, when you look at the strong nuclear force, now this is the force that is responsible for the stability of matter by holding together protons and neutrons of the atomic nucleus and thereby forming atomic nuclei. So all the protons, as we know, carry a positive, what allows it to remain stable inside the atom's nucleus and not being expelled, right? The stronger nuclear force. Now, the stronger nuclear force is also balanced in an extremely precise fashion. Had it been weaker by 2%, hydrogen atoms would have undergone repulsion and would have never been able to bond with other chemicals, leaving the universe in a state of nothing other than hydrogen atoms roaming around. So what is, and this is why many of the writers who've discussed this, is that what is so wondrous about this state of being finely tuned is that had some of these forces not been where they are, exactly are, the universe would have ceased to exist. There would be, the universe that we know today would not be there. In fact, some of the factors are balanced in a way that allowed the development of stars, planets, and matter. Other forces are so finely balanced that they were simply put in a place to allow for mankind to exist. So, and the point is that this is such a precision that it's very difficult how all of this could happen just by chance. And there's an example that's given by Antony Flew. Again, I think I did mention him previously. He was a famous atheist who then converted, or at least accepted the possibility of there being intelligent design. And he gives an example that imagine entering a hotel room on your next holiday. The CD player on the bedside table is softly playing a track from your favorite recording. The frame print over the bed is identical to the image that hangs over the fireplace at your house. The room is scented with your favorite fragrance, the fragrance that you, out of all of your fragrances, the one that you prefer the best, it's got that same fragrance. You shake your head in amazement and drop your bags on the floor. Now you're suddenly very alert. You step over to the place of, let's say there's a drinking area, you open the door and you look at what's inside the content of the fridge, and all of your favorite drinks are there. You go through the cupboards, all your favorite chocolates and sweets are there. Even the kind of brand of water that you drink, even that is there. Whatever you look at, all of these different things, everything that is of your preference, all of it is there. The best preference, not that you've got everything there, as in all of the different types, but actually the ones that you like the most. And you notice that the book on the desk is the latest volume of your favorite author. Now you glance into the bathroom and, you know, normally you have the grooming products there and so on. Again, all of the items that are there. The gel that you normally use at home and it's your favorite gel, it's there. The shampoo that you normally use always at home and your favorite one, it's also there. You switch on the television, again, your favorite channel is on. The chances are that with each new discovery about your hospitable new environment, you would be less inclined to think that it was all mere coincidence, right? Clearly, after all of these things happening, you wouldn't just say, oh, somehow it's just a coincidence that they've managed to get all of these things so precisely right and based on my specific preference. Your assumption would be that someone has given the hotel manager a list of all of your preferences in detail, and that's why it's been prepared in this meticulous manner to ensure that it pleases you and all your needs are met. And all of this, you would certainly be inclined to believe, is that someone knew that you were coming. It wasn't just a case that it all happened randomly. Now, he further adds, now, if that holiday scenario is kind of a poor one, especially when you compare it to the fine-tuning argument, because the fine-tuning argument is actually far more precise than the example that's just been given about the hotel. In fact, he argues that the more I examine the universe and study the details of its architecture, the more evidence I find that the universe, in some sense, knew we were coming. What it means by this, that for life to exist on universe, there were so many things that needed to be so finely tuned, whether, as we've mentioned about gravity, whether it's a strong nuclear force, whether it's all of the other elements that are necessary for life to exist, all of that to happen, all indicates that there has to be this, that all of this could not have happened randomly. The fact that our atmosphere is clear, the fact that our moon is just the right size, the right distance from the Earth. You know, you might have even seen these short videos which talks about if the moon was actually closer proximity to the Earth, what kind of devastation would happen within the planet Earth, right? So how the moon is exactly the right size and distance from the Earth, and that its gravity stabilizes the Earth's rotation, that our position in our galaxy is again just so, that our sun is its precise mass and composition. Again, you might have seen some of this, that even if the sun was slightly closer to us, our planet, then we would not be able to live on the planet. We would all die from the heat, right? All of these facts and many more not only are necessary for us to be able to live on the planet Earth, but also so crucial that when the scientists are discovering all of this, they are completely perplexed by it. That how is it possible that even you have someone who's an atheist who now converts or accepts the possibility of God, because the more they study the universe, they just cannot make sense of how much detail, precision, and how far the laws and regulations are so accurate mathematically to allow such a high degree of precision for human life to exist, or any life to exist. That's why even someone like Einstein said, the most incomprehensible, as in the thing that you can't understand the most incomprehensible thing about the world is that all of it is comprehensible. Like, for us to be able to even study this and know these details, or our existence in this world is at a fixed place, at a fixed moment in time, with highly specific, precise, finely tuned measurements about the world that we know of. The space for us to decipher the universe has also now opened us. This would not have been possible without these measurements that we are now aware of, right? So the degree of mastery and fine-tuning brings about clear questions that we need to answer. How were all of these constants, these states, and the data points found? And is there someone or something that brought them all together in this precise fashion? Or was it always meant to be this way? Or did the universe just simply come about by accident, as some of the atheists want us to believe? And you get some of these atheists who are literally, you know, sometimes they accuse the theists of blind faith, right? Or they just believe in God as an explanation. But in reality, the desperation the atheist has to go through in order to maintain their position is even far more ridiculous. So when we see all of this mastery and precision, their argument would be that, oh, this is all somehow determined. This is the way it was supposed to be. But all the data suggests that the probability of a universe like ours that would allow life is so extremely minuscule compared to all of the infinite probabilities of lifeless universes. There is not even the minutest of evidence that would suggest that these constants must always come about in this a particular manner. And so you have so many scholars and scientists, mathematicians, and so on, trying to give explanations to try and make people understand how precise what we have is. And so clarifying the impossibility of the most primitive, just forget the whole universe and so on. We're just looking at the primitive cell coming into existence, right? The cell itself. One example that's given is like, the example is like you have a junkyard. Yeah, you have where, a junkyard is where you have all the scrap pieces, yeah, bits of pieces of, let's say, a Boeing 747 airplane. So they're all disassembled, they're all broken apart, all ruined, all over the place in this particular land. And then suddenly a whirlwind, wind comes and it blows on the yard, as you can see in the image. And then suddenly from that wind blowing, what is the chance that after the wind passes, a fully assembled Boeing 747 is ready to fly from that place? The possibility of something like that happening is so negligible that even if a tornado went to blow through enough junkyards to fill the whole universe, that wouldn't happen, right? And yet what we have with the universe is even far more complex than that. And if we were to clearly say, and many of you have heard the stories of, scholars of the past when they're arguing with an atheist, and they say, in one of the famous debates that one of these scholars, sometimes is attributed to Imam Abu Hanifa, but there's a dispute on that, where there was a debate with an atheist, and he came late, and the atheist said, why is it that you're late? And the response is, I'm really sorry, I was coming, and then I realized that there was a river, but the bridge had broken. So there was no way for me to cross over the bridge. But then suddenly, whilst waiting, I saw that these trees suddenly started to kind of chop itself and fall down, and then suddenly fly together and then make a bridge that then allowed me to cross over the bridge. And obviously the atheist said, how ridiculous is that? The possibility of something like that happening is just not possible for such a thing to happen. And so then the response from the Muslim scholar is then, okay, what about this entire universe with all of its beauty and precision and so on? How can all of this just happen by chance? And so when we look at that, and again, there's so many other examples I can give, all demonstrating the unlikelihood of the universe coming together in this particular form as we have it today. In one calculation, for example, he says that he calculated, this is British physician and mathematician Roger Penrose. He calculated that the odds of our universe having such low disorder at the beginning of time are 1 in 10 to the power of 10 to 123 power. In other words, 1 followed by a million, billion, 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 billion zeros. The number is so large that if you wrote it all of the zeros, it would stretch across the galaxy. And you're more likely to win 10,000 lotteries in a row and also get struck by a lightning every time you won a lottery than you are ever of finding a universe with such a low disorder at its inception, right? So other examples that have been given is like, for example, imagine that you throw a banana onto a very thin piece of thread stretched out in the air, and the banana lands on it perfectly and balances. And then afterwards you throw a spoon onto the banana and it balances vertically on its own. Then you place an egg on top of that and it still balances vertically. And then you place a pen and it remains all vertical, and so on and so on. And then even a pin, if And to such an extent, it's almost impossible. Yet, when it comes to the universe, it is far more unlikely. Like, for example, the astrophysicist Michael Turner said that it would be like shooting an arrow from the edge of the universe and to hit a target at the other end with a margin of error of 1 millimeter, right? Another, he says that if we filled America with metal currency until the mound reaches the moon, which is 380,000 kilometers from Earth, repeated the process for 1 billion other continents, colored one metal piece in red and buried it under one of these mounds, and then we sent in a blindfolded man and ask him to pick out the red piece, the probabilities of him picking out that red piece is 10 to the power of 40 to 10 to the power of 40. Now compare this figure with what we have already mentioned previously. So as you can see from this and many, many other examples, there's also a very interesting example that was done. It's also known as the monkey theorem. So it was to do with the British national. So the idea which was presented in different forms and variations, but the possibility, they said that the possibility of life arising in this universe by chance is in the same multitude of, for example, monkeys banging away on a computer keyboard and eventually ending up writing a Shakespeare sonnet. So as you know, one of these scholars decided to actually carry out the experiment. It was conducted by the British National Council of Arts. A computer was placed in a cage with 6 monkeys. And after 1 month of these monkeys hammering away, some of them even using it for a bathroom, the monkeys produced 50 typed pages, but not a single word. Now, obviously, the shortest of the words in the English language is the letter A. So A, obviously with space in either side, the monkeys, even after a month of banging away at this keyboard, were not able to even produce 1 word of the English language. So again, and these are just some of many, many other types of examples that have been given to demonstrate that the possibility of all of this happening is extremely unlikely, all of this happening by chance. So that's the first proposition. Now, with regards to the second proposition, I know I'm quickly out of time, so I'm going to quickly finish on this point. The second proposition is that this consummate mastery suggests that there is a wise, omniscient doer who created it in this manner, right? That's the second proposition. Now, obviously here, we're not going to spend too much time on this because the mastery and the immaculateness was obviously it's linked to the proof for the principle of causality, right? What caused it, which was already discussed previously in our last argument when we're looking at the argument of the cosmological argument. So the mastery and the immaculateness means that there was a cause, and that cause is an omniscient doer, all-knowing, and from whom the act of mastery came, and it manifested in what he masterfully made. So that demonstrates that all of these things that we see in front of us could not have happened without the presence of an omniscient creator. And so those are the propositions which leads to a conclusion that the creator has to be Allah. Now, obviously, there are some objections to this particular argument. And so, inshallah, in the next session, we'll quickly look at some of the objections. So if an atheist comes and tries to object to the arguments, we should know how to respond to it. And even among some Muslims, they have also rephrased the structure of the argument, especially the second proposition, that the mastery suggests that there is a wise omniscient doer who created it in this manner. There's a slight discussion on that as well. Maybe inshallah we can discuss that next week as well. If there are any quick questions, inshallah I can address them now. True, very true. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. And that's the way the Quran even tells them about this. Which of your favors of your Lord can you deny?